Welcome back to my channel. I want to thank you for joining. Geostrategic engagement is a very important game that some countries still fail to understand. But one important nation in the continent of Africa, South Africa, does understand the implication of not taking a particular position in a global event. At this moment, despite the failed meeting that we saw at the United States of America, as the United States wanted to embarrass the country of South Africa, like I said, the global community were watching, and Africa in particular was watching that particular back and forth between Mr. Ramaphosa, the South African delegation, and more importantly, other issues that came up at that time. But South Africa continued to debunk that. The global media has debunked it, that the United States of America lied to an extent. It's important to note that despite that particular back and forth, the geo relationship that we've seen with the world richest man and the South Africa's own government and the leader of the nation of South Africa, and that doesn't mean that South Africa doesn't have challenges. Make no mistake, South Africa have internal issues that it needs to resolve. It is across the board. They have come out and acknowledged their issue. But when a foreign leader starts putting its mouth, sticking its nose in the internal affairs of other nations, I think that is condescending and paternalistic perspective from the African's own viewpoint. The continent of Africa has always questioned why their geopolitical partners feel that they can make choices and decisions for them or tell them how to run their nation. The situation in South Africa wasn't unique. We've seen that happen across the board in the continent of Africa. Why am I saying this? I'm saying this because African nations and a whole lot of other countries has questioned the multipolarity of the global community at the moment. In a speech in the country of South Africa, the South African leader, Mr. Ramaphosa, came out and jabbed international countries, the rich nations around the world, questioning their perspective on global development and collaboration, which to him, he perceived that to be in the perspective of that some countries really want to lead the world, but they fail to understand the difficulties and challenges that other countries are going through, that some countries will go closer to other partners to build their relationship. But more importantly, he dived into the importance of the reason why the constitution of the country of South Africa will not be changed as a result of the previous history that this nation has gone through, and that South Africa will move forward to limit the injustices considering their previous history. To have a perspective on this, let's play this clip from Mr. Ramaphosa.
To achieve and to hasten the process of transformation. And in a number of other countries also facing authoritarianism and populism, and even in long-established economies. And we see how dictators and people who are either heads of states are tilting more and more towards dictatorial controls of their own countries. And the other challenge that is being faced is just the mistrust in institutions. And this is fueled by high levels of corruption and high levels of capture. We had our own state capture, but we are seeing capture being manifested in a number of other countries, countries that you never thought would have state capture, and it is happening. And we also see lack of accountability in a number of institutions, and also global conflicts that are manifesting themselves in a number of ways. Conflicts such as the Ukraine and Russia conflict, and continued conflicts in the Middle East, and also the genocide that continues to happen in Gaza. And we also see high levels of terrorism in a number of areas in the world, and coups, and particularly in the Sahel region, and destabilization in the DRC and a number of places. And we also see an assault on multilateral systems or institutions where they are becoming weakened, and these institutions, in the way they function, have become unrepresentative and in a number of ways outdated and ineffective as well. And the rules-based international order is under strain and is being undermined and being undermined by major powers that are competing rather than cooperating. And there is also what you could say a lack of coordinated leadership for these institutions. And all these challenges are in many ways unprecedented in scale as well as complexity. And they also create a historic moment, I would argue, for transformation. So as we look at these challenges, we should look at them as opportunities to bring about change, to bring about transformation. The choices that leaders make, the choices that communities make, as well as institutions, including institutions or entities such as the BBC, will determine the direction of the next few years towards either greater division or collapse or towards transformation. And I would argue that it should be more towards transformation. There is a profound and urgent need all round. And sometimes we focus on ourselves only, but if you look at all the challenges that are being experienced around the world, I would argue that transformation is needed in the way that our world is functioning today. And it's needed across many systems that affect the lives of ordinary people, in the economy, in social structures, in climate action, in political processes, and many others. And these domains, in many ways, are interconnected. If you look at political structures, are also interconnected with issues of climate change. One could ask, why is transformation important? And a number of speakers who stood here were articulating themselves on the work that they are doing for transformation. And I was rather impressed as a number of either training seaters as well as a number of companies that stood up here speaking about the work that they are doing. And in many ways, one would say that we are in a transformative era in our country, because transformation is not simply about just reform. It's about rethinking systems to ensure that, yes, there is dignity, there is equity, there is also sustainability and resilience for the future generations that will follow us. And it is to this end that we adopted the theme that we did for our G20, that it should be about fostering equality and fostering sustainability and ensuring that, yes, there is full transformation. Now, the current polycrisis that the world is facing, which manifests in the way that it is, as I articulated, demands systemic change rather than incremental adjustments.
South Africa is an important economy in the continent of Africa, irrespective of your position with regards to the country's own global standing. However, it's important to know that despite the meeting of the United States that others will consider it a success, but the country of South Africa needed to go back home and move forward with regards to its own issue that it has. For that reason, Mr. Ramaphosa came out clear, without hesitation, without any doubt, and went back to history, talked about the constitution of the country, and said this:
"This must be a common effort that brings all South Africans together." And I'm hoping that when we hold our national dialogue, we'll be able to address this more fully as South Africans put their heads together to deal with the challenges that face our country. We must also give practical effect to what is contained in the preamble of our Constitution, which says, "We, the people of South Africa, recognize the injustices of our past. We honor those who suffered for justice and freedom in our land, and respect those who have worked to build and develop our country, and believe that South Africa belongs to all who live in it, united by our diversity. Now, if we are to remain true to this solemn declaration, which is the preface to our Constitution, then we must reaffirm our common commitment to empowerment. We must reaffirm our common commitment to transformation, our common commitment to bring about change. We must reaffirm our common commitment to redress as well as restitution. Now, Constitution is very clear, and many people don't tend, they tend to sort of not pay close attention to the equality clause in our Constitution. The equality clause in our Constitution is very clear. And the struggle in our country was about bringing about equality. And the heart of our Constitution is around the equality clause, which says that steps and measures and laws must be made to redress the injustices of our past. And we will not turn away from that. And we must recognize that economic empowerment is in the end an undertaking that requires deliberate action across nearly every area of our national life. And there are those who say, please stop talking about what happened in the past. It is what happened in the past that we must never forget, for it must inform what we need to do now, and it must inspire what we should do in the future. That's what we need to do. It is not limited to a few laws, policies, or regulations. The economic empowerment of South Africans who were previously disadvantaged starts at birth. It begins with the circumstances into which a person is born. It starts from nutrition to healthcare, from early childhood development, the quality of basic education. I must say that one of the errors we made in our transformation process over the last 30 years is not to focus on early childhood development. We neglected early childhood development, and this is one of the fundamental changes that we have fostered in the 6th administration, that we are pushing ahead with in the 7th administration. We admit that we are 30 years late, but as they say in the classics, it's better late than never, and we are doing it now. And we must ensure that the black child who was deprived of a good education, receives the same developmental foundation that all children need to succeed in life. The expansion of fee-free schooling, the funding of students from poor and working class families. And we are now funding almost 1.2 million young people in higher education. The school feeding schemes, the scholar transport, and the child care grants all make a vital contribution to the economic empowerment of those who were previously disadvantaged.
African nations at this stage must wake up and understand that their geopolitical partners have their own internal problems that they are dealing with. We see Europe at the moment is facing an incredible pressure coming out from a number of its own internal problems that we all see. Immigration issues, the war in Ukraine, as we see Russia engaged at the moment with the country of Ukraine at the moment as well. The United States of America has tariff problems going back and forth with the country of China. China stood its ground so far. We see the leader of the United States also pushing the European Union back and forth. African nations are diversifying their relationship with Asian partners, and some countries across the region are moving closer to reviving the African Continental Free Trade Area. It's an important moment. So for Mr. Ramaphosa to come out and say that the continent of Africa at this moment is looking to work alongside other partners that can, to an extent, looking at the globalization which some countries want to shut down. It is important to know that South African officials have come and acknowledged that it is a problem across the board, and they are ready and open to work on it to see how they can resolve that particular issue, because it's a burning concern in the country of South Africa, as we all have seen a number of South African citizens that went to the United States of America, but again, experts say they do not fit the mold of an immigrant. However, South Africans want to build their country, work alongside their diverse population growth, but for foreign countries to come and stick in their nose and trying to tell them how to move forward or how to do things or what's happening in the country, I think the country of South Africa debunked that, and to an extent, it's one of the times that I see the country came together to work alongside themselves and see how they can go back to the drawing board to resolve this issue. The country of the United States of America will come to realize that African nations do have their own internal challenges, but you have to go deeper to have a clear understanding as to the reason why some of these problems come from the way they emanate from, going back to history in the case of South Africa. I will be looking forward to meeting you soon in our next episode. Have a good day. Bye-bye.